Before we start building another visualization, let me first tell you a little bit more about the difference between discrete and continuous pills. Discrete pills are blue and continuous pills are green. And let's build a bar chart right now so I can show you how these pills behave differently. So when you drag a continuous pill onto your view, an axis is created. And when you drag a discrete pill onto the view, labels are created, or headers, because these are distinct values, separate values, and these are treated as a range, an infinite range of numbers. So let's build a bar chart. Let me do this with city and age. I will use the average age and I will swap the rows and columns so you can read the city names a little bit more easy. And now, if we were to drag a field onto color, we want to give the bars different colors. If we drag a discrete field onto color, such as city, I can just drag and drop it onto my marks card on color. And I want to add all members. And now we see that all the cities have different colors. So you just get a palette of colors and they are all separate, distinct colors. And when you use a continuous pill for your color card, so I can drag and drop this onto color again, I will use the average again. You see that this time there is no palette of colors, there are no separate colors, but there's one color and it's a gradient. So again, this is a range. It goes from light to dark, where our average age goes from low to high. So if I sort these bars from high to low, you see that the gradient runs down from dark to light. So this makes sense because this is a continuous pill. So this is a range. It's not separate, distinct values. And the same goes if we want to use our filter. So if we use a discrete pill to filter our views, for example, gender, I can drag and drop this onto my filter shelf and a window appears. And here I can choose from a list of values, so again, distinct and separate values, I can choose which one I want to show. So for example, I would only like to show the female employees. I can click OK. And now my view is filtered and it only shows the female employees. And if this is how you want to present the graph on your dashboard, then you can just leave it like this. But if you want to make it a little bit more interactive, you can right click it and say show filter. And now your end user has the control over the view to show exactly the values that he or she wants to see. So this is how a discrete pill behaves on a filter. I can drag and drop it out of there. So now my sheet is not filtered anymore. And I can do the same for a measure. So for a continuous pill. If I drag and drop this onto my filter, first, I get the option that asks me, do you want to filter on row level or on an aggregated level? So, because we are using the average age, let's just use that for now as a filter as well. So I select average and I click next. And then I get a new window that allows me to select the range of values that I would like to show. So again, these are not distinct and separate values like the discrete pills, but we get a range that we can choose from. So for example, I would only like to show employees that are 35 and older on average. Then I can select this as my range, and I could do the same thing to choose the option at least, and then say 35 and older. But for now, let's just go back to range. And I click OK. And now you see my view is filtered and you see the youngest average age in my bar chart is 35.21. So like with the discrete ones, if this is how you want to present it in your dashboard, you can just leave it like this and filter is applied. But if you want to give your end user some control over the view, you can show filter again and let them select a range of values that they would like to see. So the last example that I want to give you that shows the difference between discrete and continuous fields is when you're working with dates. Now let's make a new sheet and I will show you this as an example. So here we have our absence data and we have our absence date. And you see it's a green pill. So when I drag this onto my view, by default we'll get a continuous date. And this gives us an axis, just like we would expect from a continuous field. Now we can change this by clicking on the menu and say convert to discrete. Now you see that it's a blue pill. And when we drag it onto our view, it gives us a label. It's now by default a discrete year. Now dates can either be discrete or continuous, and you can always change it by clicking on the pill menu and changing the value from discrete to continuous. So all these values up here are discrete, and below the line you have the same year, quarter, month and day, but then the continuous ones. So when I change it here, you see the pill changes from blue to green and it's now continuous and it gives us an axis. So this is how Tableau treats the continuous date truncations. They are treated as an ongoing progression along an axis. So we see this when we change it to a continuous day. We see that we now have all the days of the year along the axis. So January 31st goes on to February 1 and then the whole month of February, then on to March, etc. So you have all the days of the year. Whereas if we change this to a discrete day, you see we get labels again because it's a discrete field now. And we don't have all the days of the years. We just have 1 to 31 and all of the individual months are inside of this category. So I will show you this with a line graph to make it even more clear. So let's put this onto our columns because I want my dates on the horizontal axis. And I change this back to a continuous day. So now we have all of the days of 2017 on the horizontal axis. And let's have a look at our absence data. So remember, 0 was when an employee was not absent and 1 is when an employee is absent. So if we take the sum of this field, we get the number of employees that are absent per day. So this is a nice overview of all the days and you can see exactly how many employees are absent. And now when I change this to a discrete date, you see that we get a whole different graph. We have now number 1 until 31 again, but no more individual months because they are all grouped inside of these numbers. So if I change this into a bar chart, I can make this more clear. I'll drag date onto color and I'll change it to month. And now you see for 1, the first day of the month, we have December 1st, November 1st, October 1st, September 1st, etc. We have all of the first days of the month in here. The same goes for the second day. We have December 2nd, November 2nd, etc. So all of the second days of all of the months. So with a discrete date part, you just create categories like you would with any discrete field. And they are all categorized in here. So now you know the difference with working with dates, with discrete and continuous dates. And I will change this back to a continuous day again. Change it back into a line graph. And we'll use this chart as our line graph for the dashboard. Let's change the title. And now you can see easily that we have the highest number of absent employees on September 7th. And the lowest one was on December 31st. So let's make one more visualization for this lesson. And for this visualization, we'll use the measure names and the measure values. Measure names and measure values are fields that are automatically generated by Tableau. And you use the measure names if you want to use your measures as a dimension. So you want your measures to behave like a dimension. So you can slice and dice your data, just like a dimension would do. but then you use your measures. So I'll give you an example if you want to make a side-by-side bar chart. So let's drag gender to our row shelf. And then let's have a look at the job satisfaction. And at the year since the last promotion. Now what you want is that you have first the job satisfaction and the year since last promotion, and then you want it divided by male and female. So you want these bars next to each other. But now you see that the measures are creating separate columns. So this is not what you want. So what you can do is, I will drag these out once again, is use your measure names, and you drag this onto the row shelf as well. So now it says no measure value, so we need to drag in the measure value. And I'll drag this onto my view, see what happens. And now we see that all of the measure values that we have, so all of the measures, are now in the measure values. And you see that measure names is a dimension, so you have first you divide it by gender, and then per gender you have all of the measure names and their measure values. Now we don't want all of these, so we can drag some of the values that we don't want out of here. So let's drag it out of this column, and immediately you see that a filter appears. Now if I click on this and I say edit filter, you see that the measure value that I just dragged out of the column is now deselected. And this is an easy way for me to deselect all of them by clicking on none and then just selecting the ones that I want. So now I click OK, and you see that in my measure values only the two selected values are still here, and we see that this is a sum, so I will go to my measure values, click measure and select average instead of sum, and now both of my measure values are aggregated on average. And now I want to make this into a bar chart, so it's now on text, so this appears as text on my view. I will drag it to columns, and you see that we have a side-by-side bar chart. Let's swap the rows and the columns to make it a vertical bar chart, and let's just divide it the other way around. So I first want to see my job satisfaction and the year since the last promotion, and then those two categories divided by male and female. I can go and put gender on color to make it even more clear. So now we have a legend that says the male is orange and female is blue, and we have a nice side-by-side bar chart. So if you have trouble doing this, I can show you a quick way that Tableau can help you to get this result. So let's go back to the first way that we try to make this. So you have your gender, you have the year since last promotion, and the job satisfaction. Right, so you have these fields selected, and you want a different chart than the ones that Tableau suggests. You can click on Show Me on the top right corner, and Tableau gives you the options for all of the different kinds of charts that you can make with these selected fields. So here you see the side-by-side chart. If I click it, it automatically generates the side-by-side bar chart with the measure values and the measure names. Now, I want you to understand what this means. So now when you click on this Show Me icon and these fields appear, you know why that happens. So this is a quick way to make graphs and charts in Tableau. And we can give this a name again. And I can change the view from standards to fit with, so you can read it. And this is the last chart that we made in this lesson.